Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to John Dudley Speaks. I'm your host, Grumpy Jack. Today's episode of John's Perspective is a double feature. I also have my review up on Vampire Weekend's Only God Was Above Us on the channel now. Check it out. Led by frontman and guitarist Dan Auerbach and drummer Pat Carney, the Akron, Ohio blues rock duo The Black Keys were born out of the garage rock revival of the 2000s. Their raw, fuzzed out, self-produced first few records gained them a huge following in the underground, in spite of obvious comparisons to the White Stripes at the time. 2004's Rubber Factory, in particular, found the duo perfecting their blend of spunky garage rock riffs and indie rock crooning. And in 2006, they find themselves landing a deal with None Such Records, a label that they still release music on to this day. After forays into the edgier, abrasive parts of their sound, as well as ventures into the spacious, more ambitious pockets of Danger Mouse's production, the duo hit the mainstream big in 2010 with the massive crossover appeal of Brothers. This record was and is still an absolute blast, mixing infectious hooks and a pop rock tilt with their patented blues rock crunch. El Camino was released the following year to even more gargantuan success, leading to the ubiquitous Gold on the Ceiling, Lonely Boy, and Little Black Submarines. Naturally though, in 2014, the Keys dared to switch up their style, spotlighting psychedelic rock and soul on the criminally underrated Turn Blue, and that record might actually feature the best song of their entire career. After a long break, in 2019, the slightly underwhelming comeback record, Let's Rock, Keys returned to their garage rock roots, and 2021's Delta Cream saw them do that to a more favorable extent with a covers album. And when it comes to 2022's Dropout Boogie, it's a fine record that harkens back to the band's El Camino era pretty nicely. Overall though, it's just not vital Keys' work beneath its shiny surface. But now in 2024 with their newest album, Ohio Players, Dan and Pat are back to prove that they have some surprises up their sleeves, and honestly, they still do. For years, I feel like the Keys have been trying to blur the lines between their bolder, Pink Floyd-esque psychedelic leanings and their garage rock roots. And Ohio Players is the first time musically where they've bridged that gap. This Is Nowhere, the opener of the album, feels like a mix of the uncertainty of Attack and Release and the buoyancy of El Camino. And its equal level of ambition and restraint is a perfect thesis to start off this record. Do a magnificent job behind the boards on this album, boasting Danger Mouse's spacious production stylings while not reneging on what made the band so appealing in their early DIY years. The use of additional musicians throughout the track listing really fills out the production as well, and this is most present on the swooning anthemic On the Game, one of the most stirringly melodic Keys songs in well over a decade. The lead single, Beautiful People Stay High, is an effortlessly rollicking smash, merging the big band spectacle with Dan's fuzzy guitars, the Beck-inspired group vocals, that's propulsively driving percussive strokes. It's prime era Keys, just bigger, bolder, and dare I say, kinda better. The low-key instrumentation here is also incredibly welcoming, with the enchanting cover of I Forgot to Be Your Lover deftly mixing Dan's crooning with an orchestral arrangement that's nothing short of gorgeous. But this is a Keys record after all, so you better believe that there's gonna be some killer rockers on this track listing. And with Please Me Till I'm Satisfied, Live Till I Die, Read 'Em and Weep, and Fever Tree, we have blues rock scorchers here that pay tribute to this style better than anything in their catalog since Brothers. Say what you will about Candy and Her Friends and Paper Crown, which mix hip-hop into the instrumentation through very abrupt transitions to Lil Noid and Juicy J. It didn't fully 100% mix with the tone of the album for me, but at the same time it pays homage to black rock in a way that goes pretty hard. So that just goes to show that Dan and Pat are far from being done with experimentation, and that counts for something. If there's any complaint that I have about Ohio Players, it's that Dan and Pat hit a lot of the same familiar writing beats that they've hit in the last decade. The nondescript lyricism doesn't always work, and there is a bit of a derivative quality for the blues rock jams. Greg Kurstin's writing contributions making the band feel a little broader, just as he did with Foo Fighters' Concrete and Gold. However, I applaud Dan and Pat's consistent utilization of theme, using the collaborative framework for bombastic choruses like on Beautiful People Stay High. The beauty here is in Dan's ability to use arrangement to his advantage, especially when pushing a positive vibe and themes about love, freedom, and trust. I also love Dan and Pat's ability to draw from a treasure trove of lyrical pastiches, starting with the simplistic writing of Please Me Till I'm Satisfied, as well as the slightly more inaccessible structure of Don't Let Me Go. Added writing credits on This Is Nowhere also add a new layer of exploration. Juicy J's Paper Crowns verse is a bit spotty in the context of the album. Lil Noid's contributions on Candy and Her Friends feel a little out of place, but I feel like this was purposeful given the personality that both rappers are giving to the track, so I think it still works. But overall, these songs sound hooky and fresh while still being able to intrinsically drop us into Dan's perspective. And though it may be straightforward, it's not generic, which elevates the writing of these tracks above a lot of their recent albums. One thing you can always count on with a Keys record is that they're going to rock out unapologetically. Recently, it feels like they've been slightly cosplaying on their work in this realm, like on Let's Rock and Dropout Boogie, but I'm happy to say that the pockets and the groove that they hit on this sound much more veritable. What Dan packs most into the album is balance, and that applies to his vocals on this project too. The falsetto lays Don't Let Me Go is versatile and very turn blue in its execution. His gruffer croons on I Forgot to Be Your Lover are heartbreaking, and he just sounds effortlessly cool on Please Me Till I'm Satisfied. Paper Crown is a ton of fun with Beck and Juicy J adding different levels to the track, and while Juicy J's performance does catch us off guard, I think it does so in a kooky, flattering way. Pat Carney kills it on the drums once again, keeping the energy humming from track to track and enlivening every track quite excitingly. And although the band find themselves in a lane that's slightly derivative of their own material, their strong performances and their dedication to their craft is undeniable and admirable. The buzzsaw guitars are just as important as the orchestral string passages, and Dan and Pat work around the vision rather than putting it in the back seat, and that's why this is one of their most excellently cut records in a long time. There are a few skippable moments across his track listing, but that's really up to taste because overall, the band is super consistent on this one. This Is Nowhere really kicks this album off on the right foot, and the guys don't miss a beat afterwards. I found myself connected to all of their sonic templates throughout the album, and the dynamics are so versatile and appealing, they tore us through the subgenre very tastefully. Spots where the pacing lags can thwart its progression at times, and I did have mild issues with the meshing of the genre hybrids, but it's really hard to criticize a record with such a lack of misses.
Have I told you?
This is the most I've enjoyed a Keys record in a long time. Personally, I put this a tad above El Camino in terms of its catchiness, its overall quality, and its replayability. But yeah, that's just my perspective. If you're a Black Keys fan, you're gonna love this album. I'm sure you're already listening to it right now. And if you want a good old tour through the decades, sponsored by Dan Auerbach and Pat Carney, they got you covered with this one. Alright, that's all I got. Bye!